5G. Now we've got 6G, sixth generation. It's tremendous. It's the best microwave in the world. It's so tremendous. I think we can fry the moon and prove that it's really made of cheese. Anyone from back in the day that used to get into CB radios and stuff, sitting there with their old Dick Smith 40 channel CB radio in their bedroom running off a car battery with a 5-foot black whip with a 5-foot droopy base hanging off it to triangulate and pyramid their signal, which had to be tuned in with a SWR meter, shortwave radio meter. You should understand what 5 and 6G is for, exactly what it's for, after watching this. My mate Hannaford will get this one.
I came across this article on January 3rd that I can't stop thinking about. The heading was, How the U.S. Deleted Venezuela's Air Defenses So Quickly. And it's not necessarily because of what's in the article, although that's...
I love the Drey Dossier.
Right, but just more so, I think, the phrasing of this, like deleted. It doesn't feel like the vernacular of military reporting, or at least not the kind I'm used to. They're usually using words like destroyed, neutralized, taken out, war words. But deleted feels like a word from our world. That's what you would do to your browser history or a text you regret sending, not to war. How do you delete things in war? And I have to imagine that semantics, the way we describe things, says a lot about what's actually happening, especially pertaining to our military, more so than the operation itself. And so I went down this rabbit hole, and that's when I learned that this coup is not just about a regime change. What happened in Venezuela isn't about boots on the ground or air defenses or military operations. It seems to me that this is the convergence of 3 systems that have been built, tested, and refined over years. AI that automates targeting decisions, surveillance infrastructure that turns human desperation into training data, and a narrative warfare that makes it impossible to distinguish what's real from what's synthetic. But first, I'm Drey, the creator of the Drey Dossier, and thank you so much for joining me wherever you're joining me from, whether it's on my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe, or my Substack, please subscribe and like. Yep, same thing. I pair every video with a written essay, a deep dive on the same topic, and at the bottom of the essay I cite all of my sources, every contract, every leak, every receipt. The link to my Substack is in the description, so you can verify all of this for yourself. I'm not asking for you to trust me, I'm just showing you where to look. In 20 minutes, the U.S. Navy took out Venezuela's entire air defense system. And this was not just any run-of-the-mill air defense system. This was the Russian-made S-300 that defense analysts had been worrying about for basically a decade. I mean, it was even nicknamed the Russian Shield and was supposed to be unstoppable, built from hardware designed to sink an American warship from 150 miles away. And how they did it was actually really interesting. From my understanding and from what I've read, the U.S. Navy jammed Venezuela's radars with electronic noise until operators couldn't see anything. Just static. And in a completely predictable move, they cranked up the power to try to cut through it. And the second they did that, those radars lit up like beacons. U.S. missiles locked on and followed the signal home. So at the same time you have that happening, you have these Tomahawk missiles now coming in, flying really low in comparison, using Venezuela's own mountain cover as coverage. And just like that, 20 minutes, not a single shot fired in return. The Russian Shield turns out to be more of a Russian suggestion. But that's just the hardware side of war, right? And that side of war is getting smaller and smaller every day. From everything I've read, everything I've found, all of my research, Project Absolute Resolve is about information. It's about control over what's real and what isn't. About systems that can delete not just military hardware, but reality itself. The footage you see, the narratives you believe, your ability to verify what actually happened. And that's why the word deleted matters. Because what's being erased isn't just equipment. It's the ground truth. It's a shared agreement about what counts as an actual fact. And given the nature of AI warfare being so untangible, in order to see the size and shape of what we're dealing with here, I think we first need to go back to when this was being built. Venezuela, 2016. Oil prices crashed and Venezuela's economy collapsed overnight. They blocked the state oil company from getting paid, froze billions in assets, and choked off critical imports. And by 2018, annual inflation hit over 1 million%. 1 million% in 2 years. Which meant that the monthly minimum wage dropped to about $30 per month, $1 a day, basically. So engineers, teachers, nurses, anyone with advanced degrees couldn't afford a week's groceries on their formal salaries. So what happens when you create mass desperation in a country full of educated people who suddenly can't afford to eat? Someone shows up to harvest it. Enter Silicon Valley. This is when the ghost work platforms begin. You've got Scale AI, Appen, Remote Tasks, Toloka. They're being met with these cheerful interfaces promising to help people earn in your spare time. You know, all that spare time you have when you're not, say, trying to survive an economic collapse. All of those companies are sitting on top of contracts with OpenAI, Microsoft, Meta, and Google. See, the AI systems being built, even by the richest companies on the planet, need hundreds of millions of tiny human decisions to function. Before you can train models on a bunch of tiny little data points, someone has to label images so that algorithms learn what a stop sign looks like. And by mid-2018, around 200,000 Venezuelans had signed up for this work at rates between 50 cents and $2 an hour. And that might sound untenable for you or I, but in a collapsed economy, that was 10 times the minimum wage. And that's not really fair, is it? Because you're not really helping them so much as you are exploiting their need to survive. In a story published by MIT Technology in 2022, they cited a teacher named Oscarina Fuentes who left Venezuela for Colombia because she couldn't afford to feed her kids. Now she spends her nights labeling images. Give the box a tick if this is a car. Draw a rectangle around the person crossing the street. Click like and subscribe to this video if you want to support independent media like the Drey Dossier. $50 an hour to teach AI owned by American companies how to see the world. Really living the dream of the information economy here. And in 2019, Scale AI rolled out Spanish language recruitment ads and launched Remote Tasks Plus, pitched as a way to help Venezuelans get through the crisis, mind you. Workers described delayed payments and platforms that crashed and then would punish them for incomplete jobs, zero labor protections. In industry reports, Venezuelans became known as some of the lowest paid data workers on Earth. Planet Earth. And it's not because they lacked skills, it's because they had no leverage. This is the first circuit of the fatherboard. Economic collapse creates an educated but desperate labor pool. Platforms then harvest that pool at starvation wages, and the labor gets sold upstream to train AI systems that will power everything else, including the weapons that just got released on them. And I want you to sit with that for a second. Like, really sit with that, because this isn't an abstract economic theory, because now desperation becomes data, and data becomes training, and training becomes weapons. So it's a supply chain. Now fast forward to July of 2024. The Department of Defense awarded Scale AI a roughly $199 million contract as part of a $708 million contract for AI and machine learning data services. And Scale AI, by the way, is owned by Meta Platforms. It's an American data annotation company. And all that means is that it provides data labeling, model evaluation, and software development applications. And then a year later, in December of 2025, the Pentagon unveiled GenAI.mil, as in military. Yes, that's really what they called it. And it's a system piping models from Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, and Elon Musk's xAI directly into military networks. Yep, don't worry guys, because now Grok can be blamed for things like, I don't know, authorizing additional military strikes in the Caribbean, killing survivors. And get a load of this. In the press announcement of GenAI.mil, the defense secretary called AI America's next manifest destiny, which, if you know anything about history, is not exactly the most comforting reference. And around that same time, in 2025, Scale AI received another $100 million to deploy its platform across top secret military networks. The CEO described it plainly: "We are moving AI out of the lab and into the hands of the operators." Which is like saying we're moving the grenades out of the hands of the operators and into the obfuscated algorithm? In translation, the US got all of that cheap annotation work, all of those images labeled by desperate people in collapsing economies, and is now baking that into the systems that are going to help the US military decide what gets blown up, when, and how. Yeah, so the model that learned to distinguish a jacket from a shirt gets retuned to tell a civilian pickup from a military technical. The pattern recognition that optimized your Amazon cart now optimizes target selection. The image labeling that helps self-driving cars stay between the lines now helps targeting software identifying radar installations from 40,000 feet. Suddenly, the 50 cent an hour click worker in Bogota and the 9-figure Pentagon contract aren't two separate stories. They're just two ends of the same cable. Which brings us to the narrative circuit. So June 3rd, 2026, the fatherboard went fully operational. Once the cyber warfare and the Tomahawk missiles helped them raid Maduro's compound, Then the narrative circuit exploded. But Trump posted an announcement on social media that Maduro was captured, America's victorious, but there were no images or videos attached. Within hours, our timelines were filled with photos. Maduro being frog marched down corridors by men in tactical gear. Shots from multiple angles, very cinematic, very dramatic. The mayor of Coral Gables shared one. MAGA influencers were amplifying the others. And when researchers ran these frames through Google's own AI detection tools, they flagged them as Gemini generated, complete with wrong star counts and flags inconsistent with uniform badges. You know, the kind of stuff you'd hope AI knows how to do, considering it's now head of the military for our country. Then came the video. It showed massive crowds of Venezuelans supposedly in the streets, sobbing with gratitude, some kneeling in thanks to Trump. And they found that the creator linked to that video was an account called Wall Street Apes, which checks out, I guess. They have 200 million followers and the video spread like wildfire. Oh, but it doesn't stop there, because that same evening, while all of these AI-generated images and videos are still ripping through social media, Elon Musk sits down to dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Trump and Melania. Because of course he does. Like, they think we're idiots. And in Elon Musk fashion, he changes his profile picture on X to an American flag and posts, "Congratulations, President Trump. This is a win for the world and a clear message to evil dictators everywhere." Not to mention, Elon Musk reposted the Venezuelan video amplifying it. And while we're on the topic, if any of you are still holding on to some fantasy that Elon Musk and Donald Trump were ever locked in some kind of adversarial relationship, or that they're fighting for control over influence, let me be very, very clear. The girls are not fighting. The girls were never fighting, okay? Because this isn't about personal loyalty or friendship. It's about infrastructure and perfectly aligned interests. Two things that both of them have. Not only does Musk have like a gazillion government contracts for all of his companies, but he's best friends with Larry Ellison. So long as Elon Musk is friends with Larry Ellison, he has access to the White House. Being Larry Ellison's #1 guy is a more powerful position than any cabinet seat could ever be. Okay, so you've got these AI photos and videos circulating on the internet. Now watch what happens next, because only after the AI-generated fakes have completely dominated the information environment for a full day does the White House finally release what it calls official content. A short perp walk video showing Maduro being escorted down a hallway, along with a still photograph of him on the deck of the USS Iwo Jima. The aesthetics of all of these official releases rhymes almost perfectly with the earlier AI-generated images. Same dim institutional interiors, same flanking escorts, same cinematic mid-chest camera height that makes everything look like a scene from a prestige television drama. Do you see what they're doing? First, the synthetic imagery floods the zone and dominates the conversation. Then, the official version drops into that same visual register. By the time real content arrives, fact itself has already started to feel slippery and unreliable. So you start distrusting everything, even yourself. Once you can't easily distinguish between what's real and what's fake, once that distinction becomes too impossible to determine, then eventually you'll just stop trying. And that surrender, that exhausted shrug of, whatever, who even knows what's true anymore? That's the entire point. Because that is what Maduro does to the people of Venezuela. That is what Vladimir Putin does to the people of Russia. That is what Xi Jinping does to the people of China. And now Donald Trump is doing that to the people of the United States of America. That is AI's strongest weaponization. And like I said, what happened on January 3rd did not materialize overnight. Venezuela has been the testing ground for this kind of mass manipulation of media for years now. Back in early 2023, Venezuelan state media rolled out something that seemed almost laughably dystopian at first. AI-generated news anchors named Noah and Darren. They were created using a platform called Synthesia, and they look like any other bland cable news presenter that you've ever half-watched while scrolling on your phone. It's very Uncanny Valley meets Local News 6. I'll link a couple of their videos in my Substack, but you should absolutely go see what I'm talking about. It took journalists and fact-checkers weeks of investigations to expose what was actually happening there. But by that point, these synthetic anchors had already been on the air, shaping the narrative for quite some time now. Mission accomplished. Speaking of China, we should probably talk about the Carnet de la Patria. So the Venezuelan government has been expanding something called the Carnet de la Patria, which translates to the Fatherland Card. Yep, it's a biometric ID and benefit system, and here's how it works. The system was built with assistance from the Chinese giant ZTE, and it links people's access to the most basic necessities in life, like food subsidies, fuel rations, and cash bonuses, directly to their political loyalty and participation in pro-regime activities. God only knows what those are. For those of you who haven't seen it, I made a video a few weeks ago about how Larry Ellison and Oracle had helped build a lot of these Chinese surveillance infrastructures back in the 1980s, right after Tiananmen Square. It's all as bad as it sounds, but I do recommend going to watch it, because understanding that history is crucial to understanding how these kinds of systems spread across borders. But back to Venezuela, there's also an app that comes with the Fatherland card system, and this app does something particularly insidious. It invites citizens to report on what they see and what they hear, effectively turning the entire population into a potential surveillance network. Security forces at checkpoints have been documented demanding people to unlock their phones so that they can scroll through their private messages and photos. One man was jailed over a WhatsApp message where he complained about the gas shortages. Another was detained for sharing a meme that showed U.S. military assets positioned near Venezuela's coastline. Meanwhile, researchers at an organization called the Digital Democracy Institute of the Americas spent months meticulously tracking regime-aligned social media campaigns. And what they found should terrify you. In key propaganda pushes, roughly 96.5% of the posts were coming from coordinated inauthentic accounts or outright bots. And in one campaign that they analyzed, a single hashtag generated 1.35 million messages. But when they dug into the data, they found that those messages came from just over 15,000 user accounts. And those accounts were being amplified by nearly 6,000 additional bot accounts. It's a Russian nesting doll of bots! And the idea behind it is that the real human voices, the people that are trying to talk about what's actually happening in their lives, are completely drowned out by the synthetic noise. Not unlike the synthetic noise that they used to defeat the Russian missile. 2 months before the raid, the Center for Strategic and International Studies published a paper called How to Win the Information Game in Venezuela. The paper describes using agentic AI to monitor localized sentiment, detect emotional windows opened by tragedy or scandal, and auto-generate tailored propaganda messages in local dialect designed to exploit those openings. Sound familiar to anyone who's been on TikTok in the last, 5 days? The author of that study said, and I quote, "With how unpopular President Maduro is, finding opportunities to safely deploy messaging won't be hard." The tools that created that information desert in Venezuela were trained in significant part by the very people who are now trapped inside of that desert. Venezuelan ghost workers sitting in cramped apartments labeled the images and sorted the text that went into these commercial AI systems. Those systems then fed back into both the state surveillance infrastructure inside Venezuela and into U.S. military propaganda operations. And now that machine is running at full speed, chewing through reality itself. And then when you zoom out, of course, Gaza appears in the frame, because systems like Lavender and the Gospel and Swords of Iron, which I've covered in my previous pieces, have been automating target selection with 10% error rate and human operators rubber stamping recommendations in 20 seconds. And Words of Iron helped Israel cover up as much of the genocide as possible. Gaza was the slow burn, Venezuela is the accelerated version, and now we're proving the formula works at high speed. So I know that this is a lot, and I know that the natural response to all of this is to feel small and helpless and like, what the hell can you do anyways about any of this? The fatherboard runs on your passivity, your exhaustion, your belief that you're too small to matter, that this is part of the design, they're counting on you to feel overwhelmed and just give up and not post anywhere ever at all. And I need you to hear me when I say this. Don't listen to them. Because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I think that there are actually some tangible things that we can do. I'm talking about concrete actions that can create either real friction in their systems or just help you navigate this a little bit better. First, stop doing their quality assurance for free. Every CAPTCHA you solve, every help us improve box you check, every image you label when a website asks you to prove that you're a human, that's training data. You're teaching their systems for free. And what most people may not realize is you don't actually have to do those a lot of the time. You can skip CAPTCHAs when possible. You can use privacy-focused browsers that minimize this kind of tracking. Whatever you do, just stop being an unpaid worker in their AI training pipeline. Number 2 is to develop your own media literacy and help others do the same. Now, I've put together a list of resources like tools to check if images are AI generated, guides to spot synthetic content, but look, the reality is you're not going to be able to send every picture you ever see or think is AI through these filters and checks. And they're not perfect either. So something I suggest is to learn to pause before you share something. And I know that sounds simple, but I think that there's such a fever of franticness to to us delivering information to one another that we're trying to do it so quickly that we forget to pause and ask ourselves, who benefits if I amplify this? Third, make noise where it matters. Your representatives do need to hear from you about AI regulation. Specifically, we need mandatory watermarking for AI-generated content, reporting requirements for military AI contracts, labor protections for data workers, and restrictions on using economic collapse as a labor arbitrage strategy. Fourth, and this is a big one, support independent journalism and research. There are so many great independent media and investigative journalists out there, and a lot of us don't have think tanks backing us, so even something as little as just subscribing to those channels and liking videos or just sharing and amplifying the work is so helpful. Fifth, and this is maybe the most important one, do not look away. I know it's exhausting, and I know it's easier just to scroll past and not to think about it, but that's what they're counting on. The reason the fatherboard works so well is because most people don't see it, they don't understand it, and they don't want to believe that it's real. But you see it now, you understand it now, you can't unknow this. Actually, no, there's one more note that I have. I'm going to go ahead and nix AI shaming, meaning that these tools are good. They are really good. And the way that they're being deployed is designed to trip us all up. It's going to happen to all of us. We're going to share an image that's an AI image that we didn't know about, or a video that we thought was real, or maybe we were just moving too fast and we didn't double check. So when you see someone that's sharing something AI generated, don't be a dick about it. You should absolutely address it, but you can do it by saying something like, hey, this might be AI, or better yet, show them how you checked. And if you're the one who shared the synthetic media, do me a favor, don't delete it. Leave the comments there that are saying it's AI. I know it feels embarrassing stuff, but that's the only way we're all going to learn about it. Look, I know that it feels vulnerable, but we're all learning about this. We're all literally just trying to keep our heads above water. So let's not delete any of this history, okay? And in all of this, I keep coming back to that word, deleted. It was never about the missile batteries. What was being deleted is the floor itself, the minimum agreement about what counts as reality, the assumption that footage can be verified and facts are knowable. The fatherboard is running right now, built on Venezuelan backs and aimed at yours. But here's what they didn't count on. People like you watching videos like this, people who want receipts, people who fact check, people who refuse to take anyone's word for it, including mine. Promise me that you'll remember, you're not small. You're not helpless. In fact, you're exactly what the system wasn't designed for. Use that.
Need a second chance? No.
Oh yeah. So what did we get for that? From the start of it. How did they do it? With 5 and 6G microwaves. White noise. All that I'm hearing from you is white noise. What's that all about? Anyone that's ever been into CBs, like I said, UHFs, that ever you had to use a short wave radio frequency meter knows exactly what I'm talking about. Bandwidth. What happens when they crank that right up? Because it's already known to be, just proved it's one type of warfare. It's another type of warfare in, what do you think cooks your food in a microwave? You ready to start cutting that graphene oxide out with a razor blade yet? Don't do that, don't do that. That's certainly not medical advice. Or is it? Or isn't it? Or is it? I don't know. I wonder if you can pull it out your nostril with a magnet. Sorry. Oh, you sound vaccinated. I'm sorry for your loss. Loss of what? That's what I mean. God bless you. Bye-bye.